Welcome back to Alyssa's Movie Takes. If you are new to the channel, I welcome you here. I do movie and TV reviews and think pieces, especially when it comes to The Chosen with a Christian perspective. And this morning, I want to just chat a little bit about season 3. And congrats to the show for on Thursday. They topped the box office for all movies with 1.6 million, beating out Avatar, which is quite a feat because that's been hanging on to the top spot for quite a long time now, over a month. And this is a very little marketing, mostly grassroots effort, and it's just so cool to see what they're able to do. But since we have season 3 all set and in the can, I wanted to bring my friend Joseph back on the show. Joseph Holmes is a New York City-based film critic and filmmaker. He works for Religion Unplugged. He also hosts his own podcast on the Overthinkers, as well as runs the Overthinkers Facebook page, which is a great place to just have a good time online, some deep thoughts and some fun memes, and just a great community that they've built of fellow people who like to think deeply. And he's also reviewed The Chosen on several different platforms. And so he and I like watching it together, and I'm happy to chat with him this morning. Welcome back, Joseph, to the Alyssa's Movie Take show.
Thank you for having me. This is fun. I enjoy our little back and forths.
Yes, me too. So let me just start by asking you, what's your overall opinion of season 3?
Yeah, I think that season 3, it's interesting. Like, we're almost halfway through the series at this point. If they do 7 seasons as they've said they planned, they talked about like sometimes 8 seasons, but they're mostly talking 7 seasons now. So we're almost like halfway through. So you're kind of getting an idea of, I think we've gotten this season idea of what the series is going to end up being overall at this point. So there's, I think, the season 3, it solidified, a lot of their formulas. Like, for example, it's their formula is we establish characters who need Jesus. Jesus gives them their backstories, emotional, and Jesus enters their lives and redeems them of their problem. And then we'll take classic stories and then build out the characters and their emotional and whatever are, or existing characters and whatever emotional arc that they've got going on. And sometimes that works and sometimes that doesn't, that formula. And I think that I think the season 3 was the best and worst of The Chosen in some sense, because they figured out their formula, and when their formula works and they do it well, it's some of the best stuff. And it's like the reason that you would have a show like this. Mm-hmm. And when the formula doesn't work, it just really falls flat on its face in ways that you kind of see exactly, oh yeah, this is what doesn't work about The Chosen when it doesn't work well. So I think about the season 3 as in some ways the best and worst of The Chosen formula.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For me, I would say overall, I enjoyed this season. I think I would rank it. If I was ranking it, I would put season 1, season 3, season 2.
Agreed.
In terms of my preference. They had so the arc that they have over the course of the season mostly involves Simon and Eden, and a little bit of escalation with Jesus and authority.
Yeah.
So you see that it's with his hometown in episode 3. He's kicked out. He's not able to come back. That's straight from scripture. Yep. And then they have even at the feeding of the 5,000, you can tell that next season him feeding Gentiles and Jews together is going to get in trouble even more so.
Yep.
And it sounds like, from what Dallas has posted on social media, that they're going to do Holy Week in season 5, which probably means season 6 is focused on the crucifixion. So they may end up going even further. So we've only really got one more season of them building up him getting in trouble with authority, because by the time you get to Holy Week, they're ready to kill him.
Right.
At that point, he's not doing any daring escapes. He will.
Yeah.
He will see what we know is coming. Yes.
Spoilers. Yeah.
Spoilers. Yeah. I think Dallas say that a lot, that spoilers, Jesus dies.
Yeah. And extra spoilers, he gets resurrected.
Yes.
But
yes. So this is not Godspell, where the end with or whatever the other one was, Jesus Christ Superstar, where they kind of end with dying. Yeah. He will come back to life. But anyway, yeah. So I think I liked the emotional arc of Eden and Simon a lot this season. And my favorite 2 episodes are probably season 3, episode 3 with the hometown.
Mm-hmm.
I like the dynamic of Jesus and his mom, and I like that she's starting to feel the pain of his call too.
Yeah.
That weighs on her, and also just the confrontation at the edge of the cliff was great. And then I also really enjoyed the scene with Veronica getting healed.
Mm-hmm.
It's one that you've heard in church many times, the woman who's bleeding and Jesus heals her by, she just reaches out and touches his prayer tassels. And then also just that whole episode was probably my favorite, just seeing it all come together. But I thought they did a great job with Feeding of the 5,000 too. So did you have any favorite moments from this season, Joseph?
Yeah. So I would say I would agree that season 3, episode 3 is the best. I would say it's the best episode of The Chosen that we've gotten since the first season, which I know is a big claim. You know, a lot of people, but I think because they do a really good job of showing Jesus' humanity, of like, he goes back to hometown. It's like Superman going back to Smallville. It's like all of the, childhood friends, his rabbi, that he, got in trouble with as a kid, and all of those different people. And Jesus really feels very human there. But then we get one of the best confrontation scenes between Jesus and one of his antagonists in that hometown preacher that he confronts. And it really is one of the most intense confrontations we have. And we don't really see a lot of, at the end of season 1, there was a sense in which, the confrontations and the tension and mission are going to escalate. And season 2, you didn't really feel that escalation. And in season 3, you feel a little bit more of that escalation. But this episode really had some of the best and really like cool lines of like, it's like, I am the law of Moses, just like really kind of, action hero kind of stuff. And there's a lot in the Bible, in the scriptures, about Jesus' confrontation with the Pharisees and showing Jesus' credibility as an authority figure through that. And they haven't really emphasized that much throughout the series so far, in a sense they're saving it, but also, if they only have one season to do that in, really, if they're doing the whole season on Holy Week, they really could have spent, escalated things this way in season 2 and given us more escalation of this in season 3. So I think that really had the magic, something really great there. I'll also say, given like we just in the finale, I don't want to give too much spoilers, but I think that the stuff with Eden specifically, in terms of her, finding ways to heal from what's going on in her life. I think, Simon, they do fine, and there's some great stuff with Simon, but I think that the stuff with Eden, because again, what's great about The Chosen is that it's trying, and what people really respond to oftentimes is they're showing these people, they're building out these characters specifically in ways that they know the audience will be able to relate to. So the audience can feel like, oh, when Jesus is giving answers to these people, he's giving answers to me too. And so the stuff when they're talking, like having Eden express what's going on with her, and she says, Jesus isn't here right now. What can I do? Which is a very, like, something every Christian goes through. Jesus isn't here right now. What do I do? And then the answer they give is a very applicable answer. And then they say, and then to have people say it's okay to go to the Bible in a dark place and read the unhappy passages of scripture in these things. I thought that, that kind of application that they gave, that was very relatable and also very true to the story, and then showing her response to it. By the way, I keep forgetting what the actress's name is who plays Eden, but she is like one of, to me, the standout performers in the series, because
Lara
again,
Silva is her name.
Yes, Lara Silva, because she just, whatever they ask her to do, she just brings it with absolute nuance and believability to the role. So those are, I think, the two things that really resonated and I responded to in the season, that really got across what the Chosen does best when it does well.
Yeah, Lara Silva does a really great job of portraying something that's not often seen on screen in terms of relatability. And I know that a lot of pastors' wives feel kind of invisible to a certain extent, or feel like they always have to be holding things together and totally on board with their husband's call. And I think that they've done a really wonderful job, and probably coming from the writers' experiences themselves, of having some of them come from ministry families, that can really take a toll. And when you are suffering, it is really easy to hold on to it yourself. And
Yeah.
so I think they showed a great job of, they did a great job of showing, and she did amazing, of just how much she was carrying while also trying to care for other people around her.
Yeah.
And
Well, and you don't,
how natural and human that is.
yeah. Well, you don't see that a lot in either Christian or secular media, because Christian media tends to not show the amount, the intensity of tragedy that this show does, and the intensity of pressure that can bring you to the breaking point. But of course, the secular media doesn't really show somebody who, like you said, is really totally on board with her husband's call and submitting to her role, but figuring out, well, how do I still get my needs met when I am submitting to this role? So that tightrope walk is really something you don't see on screen very often at all.
Yeah. Since this is from season 1, I don't mind mentioning it. So as she's processing her grief, she ends up sitting with somebody, and her mom is next to her. For me, that was a really striking moment, because in season 1, her real intense moment with Jesus is he heals her mom, and he does it for her sake.
Yeah.
More than even Simon, he does it for her sake.
Yeah.
And so that her mom is there in that moment where she's grieving.
Yeah.
It just, to me, it just spoke wonders of the marvelous thing of cinema. And
yes,
this is a great medium, because they didn't really go, and that's her mom.
Right.
To me, but I felt the deep piece of, she knows who Jesus is. She knows what he's done even for her. And yet in this situation, he's not there right now. And so,
right. Well, and that's the whole theme of
some real subtlety that they brought into that moment too.
Right. And that's one of the things, the whole, what you call it, Dallas says, the theme of the season is come to me all who are weary and heavy laden, I'll give you rest. But to me, the theme is, why does God help some people in clear ways and not others, and wrestling with that, the silence of God.
I agree. That seems more like the theme of this season, episodes and seasons. Anyway. So what was one critique that you have of this season?
Yeah, I would say there's so much of it is boring. And the reason is because they do a lot of episodes where they have various subplots going on. And a lot of times, like when they have subplots that are like, oh, there's a real established conflict here that you want to see how the characters wrestle with, that's great. But there's a lot of episodes and a lot of subplots, even in episodes that are good, where they're not doing anything interesting, or there's a clearly established conflict why we should care about this situation right now. There is so much, again, people discussing creating an olive grove. And like within the scene where they're discussing creating the olive grove, they're just talking about doing it. There's not, here's an obstacle, how do we overcome it? And, and there's just, hey, we're just doing this thing. And of course, they haven't told us why we should care about them overcoming any obstacles they do have with the olive grove. Even if they do, this seems like, well, why is this not just, sure, this is to, to support the ministry, but, why are we spending so much time on it? And they do that. And meanwhile, they spend like, a 4 minutes on the ministry that the disciples do when they're off on their own. So there's like, wait, I would have, loved 2 episodes, if not just one whole episode, on the disciples going out and those experiences of, oh, we're doing the thing that Jesus is doing, but now we're doing it on our own. This is terrifying. Oh my gosh, we're having great success. Oh my gosh, we're having great failure. Like all of those mix of emotions. That's what you have a 7-season Jesus story for, is to build out those kind of really cool moments. So you tend to like focus on the most boring stuff in many cases, the most just people sitting around talking without a clear conflict to overcome, instead of, and then again, like they spent more time with the disciples talking about the stuff going on, the stuff of their mission, than the actual mission itself. And so I think that for some perplexing reason, a lot, I know that the faith-based audience is uncomfortable with conflict, and they tend to like people just sitting around sermonizing to each other and preaching to each other and having cute, funny moments. And so I feel like oftentimes they catered to that audience where they knew they were going to be giving them some intense stuff later. And so they kind of just spent a lot of time on the boring and the not stuff, and the stuff that's kind of going to be candy for the audience of like, here, we're just going to have people sitting around nice, throwing sermons at each other so that the grandmas in the audience feel nice watching the show. And there was a lot of the season that was like that. My rule of thumb is that the story should be 75% conflict and 25% resolution, but there was a lot more, like 70% of it was resolution scenes. Or again, like they would introduce characters that would pay off later in the season, but they wouldn't explain to us who they are or why we should care about them initially. And so then they would just be chatting like about the weather and their families for like 10 minutes. It's like, why am I here? And and they would just, so they wouldn't establish right away why we should care and what the conflict is, so that we care when the small talk is happening that's exposition. So there's just a lot of that I think was, like I said, it's the best and the worst of this series, because they did this, because that's the most egregious version of that just wasting time stuff that I've seen in the series so far.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question, because because you brought up target audience, and I kind of find this online too, that it is it's a wide audience. It does appeal to multi-generation, but the classic kind of Christian media audience tends to be women, and tends to be women over
middle-aged women,
middle-aged women or older women. And I would, from my just anecdotal data, that's true with this show too. So I enjoy this. We have chatted a little bit about relating to characters. So what would you like to see in a Jesus show that would appeal to more of the guy audience?
Yeah. So I've made that kind of remark about that this show is more geared towards women and middle-aged women and the 20 to 30 guy range, which a lot of shows do cater to. Like, this is like the Game of Thrones and the superhero movies sort of are geared towards the 20, 30 male audience. And I started talking about, like, it would be nice to have a Jesus show that did sort of lean a bit towards that, so I could enjoy it in the same way, and then a lot of other of my guy friends, I could convince them to watch it. I would say, again, what I would say is, I think the sort of the female audience and the older female audience tends to go for the romance novel formula or the Hallmark movie formula, which is that I'm resisting God, and that, or I'm resisting some male hero, and then he rescues me, and that's it. Either rescues me emotionally, by telling me he loves me, or rescues me, physically. That's sort of that, and that's, again, you can create a whole channel based on that from Hallmark. And guys, it tends to be about overcoming obstacles, finding conflict and overcoming obstacles in a way that's both where an external obstacle represents your internal obstacle. That was sort of like the formula of a superhero movies. You have a villain that represents the internal struggle that the character has to go through, and by conquering the villain, in order to conquer the villain, he has to conquer himself. I would say, for me, again, since you're focusing on the disciples, I would really like to see the disciples treated like showing the process of Jesus mentoring the disciples. And so you see yourself in the disciples looking for a father figure like Jesus to train you, like Yoda, like Miyagi from the Karate Kid, into being the person that you're supposed to be. And so I think that's the kind of story I think would appeal to me as a guy, and because, again, guys are looking for men to mentor them, as you can see by people going to Jordan Peterson and Andrew Tate on YouTube. So that's the kind of thing I would like to see them focus on. I don't know if they have time to anymore, but that's what I would like to see more of in season 4 and beyond.
Yeah, I agree with you, because they hint at it in season 1 at the wedding with Cana, where Simon Peter says to the group, remember when we would watch, learn to fish? Like, we would watch Dad do it. Watch him, and then eventually we could just fish. But they probably couldn't just fish. He would correct them. Yeah. And so I do think it was a missed opportunity to spend so little, as artistic as it was. And I did enjoy the scene where they were on the road doing their, taking the show on the road. I wish we'd have spent more time with it, because Jesus had a great opportunity to speak into their lives there, because those who had success, you hear them talking about it, but it would have been great for them to talk. We had success, and we feel so powerful. And then Jesus being like, yes, you're going to feel powerful, but remember the power is mine. And you could show that through one of them getting an ego, and then him correcting that. And then you could show the people who, Andrew and Philip, who basically just like get run out of town,
Right.
They showed that a little bit, but that would have been cool because so much of their lives later on becomes that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, spoiler alert, the disciples, after Jesus dies and rises again, they experience great suffering, and most of them are martyred.
Yeah.
So have a foreshadow of that coming down the road and how they're going to handle it emotionally, especially since it is focused on the disciples. I do hope that they can include that in the next season. I missed it in this one. So me for season 4, you know, what you're going to start to see, and I almost wish we had this at the end of this season too, was one of your favorite moments in the Bible, where after the feeding of the 5,000, he basically loses most of his followers, except for his core people, and he feels dejected. And there's a great moment in the Bible that you can look up where Simon has one of his stellar moments with Jesus. So I'm looking forward to seeing how they start to handle the rejection. That's not just the rejection of the people that you would expect, but the people that have been following them. This is a good season. And I would say with The Chosen, as you said, with some of the time that they use just fillers, there's things that I end up going back and watching, sort of like reels. You know, we have reels nowadays of where they give you the highlights from sitcoms, and I've watched the whole show. Okay. That I'll go back and watch. I've watched it probably 6 or 7 times when Jesus calls Matthew, because that's one of my favorite moments. And I've gone back and I've watched when Jesus delivers Mary in season 1, 2. Season 2, I don't know if I went back and watched much, but this one I'll probably go back and watch some of the Eden scenes and some of the woman with the issue of blood and Jairus' daughter, because those are the power moments, right? So as highlights, they're great. And I think one final thought is what I enjoyed in that they did the drip release where it's week by week instead of just dropping the show all at once. I'm glad that between episode 6 and episode 7, there was some time. Because now the disadvantage for Christians who need to learn to kind of sit with that suffering is they can just go right on to the next episode. And so they'll just watch all 3 and then it will feel like resolved. But I liked watching it with it unresolved.
Absolutely.
Go back and watch. That was the one I went back and watched, was episode 6, because it was so jarring as the ending. I was not emotionally prepared for it. And I said, let me go watch this again, because I kind of shut down after watching it a bit. So I'm a little bit sad that now people watching the show will have to go straight from episodes 7, 8, because it will tie it up a bit more. But that's why I am happy that they did it the way they did, in week by week, and then
100%.
7, 8. Any final thoughts on this season, Joseph?
I agree with you. I mean, I think, I go back and forth again, because there's things I would like this show to be and things I wish that they would do better oftentimes. But I'm really happy that, like you said, I feel like Dallas is helping the Christian audience to be more comfortable with that kind of unresolved and painful conflict, because I compare off again to the shows that I watch that are more secular, and I am like, man, I know what this show could be if it, in many ways I want it to be. But I'm also, then I realized, compare it to what the audience is used to, and there's so much here that you just do not get to see in faith-based programming, and Dallas is helping the audience. You can see him on his YouTube live streams, talking through the letters he's getting from the audience, where they're saying, this made me uncomfortable. And I don't watch these to feel uncomfortable. I watch them to feel comfortable. And he's like, but that's not what life is like. And Jesus enters in and redeems life that is oftentimes extremely painful and uncomfortable. And we have to show that. And the fact he's sort of discipling people into that, I think, in a sense, redeems a lot of the show, even some of the flaws of the show that I'm happy that they're doing. Like I say, when they succeed, it's really something that's unlike any other show that's going on.
Agreed. Well, thank you, Joseph. This has been a really fun chat about season 3. Where can people find you if they want to see your stuff?
Yes, they can find me at, you can just find me on any of the socials. Obviously, you go to Joseph Holmes or Normal Guy, don't ask. You've got then also you can find me at josephholmesstudios.com, or you can find my writing work where I've reviewed a lot of episodes of The Chosen and a lot of seasons of The Chosen, all the seasons of The Chosen, at religionunplugged.com. You can also find my podcast wherever you find podcasts. It's The Overthinkers, or the website, theoverthinkersjournal.com. And also, of course, as Alyssa said at the beginning, the Overthinkers Facebook group, where we're discussing deep topics in a fun way, and then also sharing lots of intellectual memes with each other. So yeah, check any and all of those out.
Great. Thanks for joining me, Joseph. Well, that's my take on The Chosen season 3, a big overview of what we saw this season, what maybe we'll see in future seasons. Let me know what you thought of this season, what your favorite moment was, what maybe you had one critique of the show as well, and what you are expecting in seasons to come. And I will talk to you soon.